Hello everyone, welcome back to our Minutes in Maya series where we go over tips, tricks, and tools that you can do in Autodesk Maya. In the last video, we went over the cylinder primitive, and today we will be going over the cone primitive. As always, to create any primitive, there's a couple different ways you can do it. The first way you can do it is by going up to here to your poly modeling shelf, clicking on the polygon cone option, and having it get created in your scene like that. The second option is by going over to create polygon primitives cone, and you can create it like that. And the last option is by holding shift and right click. You can then pick over to the cone option as well. I'm going to go ahead and open up the option window so we can see what options we're working with, but I will be doing the manipulations through the input tab. So the first option that you have when you're creating a cone is the radius option. The radius option determines how big this circular radius down at the bottom of the cone will be. So at smaller levels below 1, it's going to be very small, almost pinpoint. But if I bring it up to higher levels here, 2, 3, even 7, that's going to bring the cone much farther out. This is going to be a little bit of a more dynamic option. On the input tab, it's not as easy to manipulate as finely, but if I was to do something like 1.5, you can see that I can just gradually get it up like that. The second option that you have to work with is the height option. This determines the vertical height of the cone. If I was to size this up a bit, so let's say to 5 or so, I make the cone taller in the y-axis of the environment here. The third option is the axis divisions or the subdivisions along the axis. This determines how many vertical divisions we have along our cone. So from this top point here all the way down to the bottom here. By default, it should set it at 20. If you want to add in more, you can go all the way up to infinity here. This just basically ends up at 50, but I can bring it out farther if I want by typing it in. So let's say I want to go to 150. I can do that as well. And you can go all the way down to 3 options. You can't go below 3 just because of how basic math works in 3D space. We'll set it back down to 20. The next option that you have is the height divisions or the subdivisions height option in your input tab. This determines how many horizontal divisions we have on our cone here. By default, it'll be just set to 1, which is just this bottom line that we have here, but we can up the amount of division we have along the cone like so. I can add in, let's say 10 or 11 like this. And the last option that we have is the subdivision caps. The cap divisions are the divisions that you have along this cone piece at the bottom here. By default, it is set to 0. Now, I'm not really too much of a fan of that because by default, setting this to 0 means that if by default setting this to 0 and having 20 divisions means that you're going to have a 20-sided polygon face here at the bottom, which is not good geometry here. If I would want to actually use this for something like rendering or for more practical purposes, I would have to add in at least 1 division on the cap just so that these are all manifold geometry at the bottom here. I don't really like how it creates non-manifold geometry by default, but that is what Maya has given to us, and that's what we will have to work with here. It's not too hard to change. Again, you can just add in divisions here on your creation options, or you can add in divisions just through your input tab, and it does the same thing that we had on our cylinder where it adds in divisions going from the ring. Well, actually does something a little bit different. The first thing that it does is that it adds in the vertical divisions that we have along to the center here, and then after that, then it starts adding horizontal divisions along the cap. So the next option that we have in our options is the round cap option. By default, it's set to off, but if I was to turn it on, at first it's not going to do anything, but just like with our cylinder option, if I start adding in more divisions along the cap, it is going to start pulling it out in a more rounded shape, and now I have somewhat of an ice cream cone like object here. I can also change the base orientation of the object on creation. So by default, it's just going to be set to the Y position. But if I was to set this to the X position, like so, you can see that it's now pointed down the X axis here. And if I were to set it to the Z position and hit apply, you can see that it is now aligned to the Z position. The last option that we have are, of course, our UV options. Let's actually undo that and just get rid of these here. The UV options determines on how the base UVs of the object will be created. If I bring up my UV editor real quick, you can see that at the start, it's going to be just these, or with normalized with preserved aspect ratio, it's going to have the cap set on one set of divisions, and then the other divisions along the length set on another UV here. I can set it to none here. If I don't want to have any UVs on the object, I can set normalization off so that they each take up one UV tile space. I can set it up to normalize where they take up one UV tile space, or I can put it to normalize with aspect ratio so that it stays fairly consistent with the aspect ratio that we have in our 3D space. All right, those are all the options that you have when you are creating a cone primitive. In the next video, we will be looking at the torus. Until next time, see ya.